Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a journey way back to the 16th century to completely redefine what it actually means to truly win a historical conflict. We're going to be looking at a legendary king whose story practically forces us to look past the immediate, wins and losses of a battlefield, and instead focus on the ultimate triumph of the human spirit.
So, can you lose a battle but still win the war? It's a really provocative question, isn't it? Well, this entire explainer is framed around the highly misunderstood legacy of Maharana Pratap. He was a leader who actually lost his most famous military engagement, yet somehow he ultimately secured his kingdom's independence. He firmly secured his place in history as this ultimate symbol of just absolute, unyielding resolve.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The Stand Against an Empire. The Unstoppable Mughals versus Mewar.
To really understand Maharana Pratap, we have to understand the massive geopolitical standoff taking place in northern India during the 1570s. It's basically the classic immovable object meeting an unstoppable force. On one side, Emperor Akbar's goal was massive imperial expansion. He wanted to bring all the Rajput states under his umbrella through vassal alliances, and, this is absolutely crucial, he demanded personal submission. But on the flip side, we have Maharana Pratap's goal, the absolute preservation of Mewar's political independence and sovereign identity. He literally refused to be a vassal. He said no way to personal submission, regardless of how much easier or more comfortable it would have made his own life.
Now, before any swords were even drawn, Akbar actually tried diplomacy. He sent not one, not two, but 4 separate diplomatic envoys to Mewar to convince Pratap to submit peacefully. I mean, this included heavyweights of the time like Raja Man Singh and Toder Mal, but Pratap? He rejected every single one of them. He absolutely would not trade his kingdom's sovereignty for personal security. And, well, that absolute refusal set the stage for war.
Moving on to Section 2. The Battle of Haldigati. The Clash in the Aravalli Pass. Let's move to and see how this builds chronologically, because when diplomacy completely breaks down, the tension just snaps. In 1572, Pratap is crowned Maharana. By 1573, those 4 diplomatic missions we just talked about have completely failed. So the pressure just mounts for 3 years until June 1576, when the famous Battle of Haldigati officially kicks off. And even after that initial clash, by September of that same year, Akbar is so determined that he personally leads a sustained campaign into Mewar. The escalation here is incredibly rapid and intense.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer disparity of forces on that day in June. It was staggering. The Mughal army, commanded by Man Singh, brings roughly 10,000 men to the field. Maharana Pratap's Mewar army, just about 3,400 men. That included a corps of cavalry and about 400 Beal archers. It is a literal textbook David versus Goliath scenario playing out in a very narrow mountain pass.
So, the battle raged fiercely for hours. And here is where we need to explicitly bust a major historical myth. Yes, the Mughals won the immediate military advantage. Pratap was wounded and actually forced to retreat to the hills. But, and this is key, it was a futile victory for the Mughals. Why? Because their primary objective was to capture or kill Maharana Pratap, and they completely failed to do so. Pratap survived to fight another day, which meant Mewar's resistance was very, very much alive.
Listen, you really can't talk about Haldigati without talking about Chetak. Chetak was Pratap's legendary horse. During all that fierce fighting, a severely wounded Pratap was actually carried to safety away from the battlefield by this incredible animal. Chetak ultimately died from his own severe injuries, but only after ensuring his king was completely safe. Even today, there's a memorial near Haldigati dedicated to Chetak, simply because this loyal act allowed Pratap to survive. It remains this deeply emotional, timeless symbol of ultimate loyalty and sacrifice in Indian history.
Which brings us to Section 3, Guerrilla Warfare and Survival, the Wilderness Resistance.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing how, with his conventional army scattered, Pratap's true military genius really begins to shine in the harsh wilderness of the Aravalli Mountains. What's incredible here is the sheer diversity of the coalition he built. This wasn't just a handful of royals holding out, He had his traditional Rajput warriors, sure, but he also had the Beal communities providing crucial, unmatched knowledge of the forests and local routes. He had Afghan soldiers led by a Muslim commander, Hakim Khan Sur, which proves this was a political fight for independence, not just a religious one. And he had loyal ministers like Bama Shah, who famously donated immense personal wealth when resources were virtually non-existent. Pratap brought people together across social and religious lines to fight a common foe.
So, completely outnumbered and outgunned, Pratap turned his massive disadvantage into a brilliant tactical playbook. Step 1. He retreated to the highly defensive, super rugged Aravalli Mountains. Step 2. He utilized that local Bhil knowledge to achieve rapid mobility. And Step 3. He launched relentless surprise ambushes against the much larger but significantly slower Mughal forces. He didn't try to fight their war. He forced them to fight his, and in doing so, he proved that intelligence and terrain mastery can completely neutralize superior numbers.
All right, moving to Section 4, Rebuilding the Kingdom, the Rebirth at Shavandand.
Fast forward just a few years. By 1579, rebellions popping up elsewhere actually shifted Akbar's focus away from Mewar, and Pratap immediately went on the offensive. 36. This is such a surprising and vital figure. Taking full advantage of the relaxed pressure, he successfully recaptured 36 Mughal outposts across his territory. I mean, despite the staggering odds and spending years living in the wilderness with his family, he slowly and methodically began taking his kingdom back, piece by piece.
Then, by 1585, having recovered a massive chunk of western Mewar, Pratap did something just as important as fighting. He established a brand new capital at Shavand. He spent his final decade entirely dedicated to the vital work of rebuilding his devastated homeland. He restored agriculture, he strengthened defenses, and reorganized his administration. It's a really powerful reminder for us that winning a struggle isn't just about the warfare itself. True leadership is about rebuilding and nurturing the very community you fought so hard to protect.
Let's look at Section 5, Enduring Lessons in Leadership, the Philosophy of the Maharana.
Maharana Pratap passed away in 1597, but his principles, they completely continue to echo today. So the crucial point is how we can take his 16th century actions and actually apply them to our modern lives. First, never surrender your core principles just because it's the easier option. Remember that a temporary defeat on whatever your personal battlefield is, that's not a failure. True failure only happens when you give up entirely. Recognize that intelligent strategy and truly utilizing your unique environment beats brute force every time. Understand that if you want genuine loyalty, you have to share in the sacrifices of your team, exactly like Pratap did in the wilderness. And finally, always remember that stepping up to rebuild after a crisis, that is the mark of true leadership.
I want to highlight this quote from historian Satish Chandra, which just beautifully summarizes everything we've been discussing. He writes, Rana Pratap's defiance of the mighty Mughal Empire constitute a glorious saga of Rajput valor and the spirit of self-sacrifice for cherished principles. You see, Pratap's historical importance didn't come from winning every single battle. Not at all. It came from his absolute refusal to trade his self-respect and his freedom for personal comfort.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. The legacy of Maharana Pratap is basically a mirror held up to our own convictions. So I'll ask you, what core principles in your life do you refuse to surrender? Really think about what you value so deeply that you would endure the wilderness to protect it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive into history sparks a fire in your own journey today. Keep learning and keep holding your ground.